Hi everyone, as regular listeners of my channel will know, I'm not exactly the BBC's greatest fan. Now, to be fair, and I've said this before, so in the BBC words, in the interests of balance, I want to put the record straight. Their programming on sports events like the Olympics, for instance, is second to none. It's the best in the world. Their documentaries on nature with David Attenborough, such as Frozen Planet, are wonderful, and that guy is going to be a loss to the world when he unfortunately dies. The person who's going to take over David Attenborough's mantle, Brian Cox, recently did a few um, documentaries with regards to the solar system and physics, and his series Wonders of the Universe was so good it inspired me to actually take an online degree in physics. That is how good it is. And there are other programming that they do which is wonderful as well. That's not counting, I mean, I don't like it all, but there's a lot of it that is very, very good. The problem I have with the BBC is they have a clear bias in their news reporting. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. A lot of people think this in the UK. And it is no more evident, no more so evident than in their coverage of anything to do with war and anything to do with foreign policy. For instance, in Yemen, there is a cholera outbreak right there, over there right now. 1 million people have contracted cholera in a war that we are supporting. Saudi Arabia are dropping cluster bombs on one of the poorest countries in the world, and we are giving them the information. We are refueling their planes. We are supplying their supply routes along with America. This is never reported. For instance, this article that they did last year on the cholera outbreak actually doesn't mention Saudi Arabia at all. The only mention of it is in the map of where Yemen is at the bottom of it, and you can see Saudi Arabia there. The only mention of the war in the country is at the top. It said the war-torn country. It didn't say that we're the ones who are supporting the war which is causing this cholera outbreak. So that's the sort of bias they have. And when it comes to the Syria bombings recently and this alleged gas attack in Douma, the bias is so clear. It is ridiculous, and I'm going to show you how biased their reporting is just by selecting 4 or 5 of their articles that they have done so far on Syria. And last night I noticed this. BBC trending, Syria war, the online activist pushing conspiracy theories. Now, any followers of mine on Twitter or any readers of mine of Russiagate, the establishment lie, there's a link down there, will know that I've been covering this in depth, and there is a clear plan with the mainstream media to discredit any independent journalists, any, and this falls into that category. Um, the article starts off like this. As the investigation continues into another alleged chemical attack in Syria, one group of influential online activists is busy spreading their version of events. Despite the uncertainty about what happened in Douma, a cluster of influential social media activists is certain that it knows what occurred on the 7th of April. They've seized on a theory being floated by Russian officials and state-owned media outlets that the attacks were staged or were a false flag operation carried out by jihadist groups or spies in order to put the blame on the Assad government and provide a justification for Western intervention. The group includes activists and people who call themselves independent journalists, and several have Twitter followings reaching the tens or hundreds of thousands. Okay, so you can clearly see there these people are following a theory, according to the BBC, floated by Russian officials of state-owned media outlets, that the attacks were staged and a false flag. So they are painting them out to be conspiracy theorists. It's actually at the top of the online activists pushing conspiracy theories. That's what the top of the article says. So there's no doubt here this is a smear job. And then any followers of mine will know, I've been saying this all along, they don't attack what these people are saying. They don't attack what journalists say. because what they're saying is the truth. They can't attack it. What they do attack is who they are. They do smear jobs on them, and it's clear as day that this is what not just the BBC do, but basically every corporate and establishment media outlet. The article goes on to say the activists call themselves anti-war, but as they generally back the Syrian government's military operations against rebel forces seeking to overthrow Mr. Assad and Russia airstrikes carried out in support, it might be more accurate to describe them as anti-Western intervention or pro-Syrian government. Now, I follow a lot of these people, a lot of them, and none of them are pro-Syrian government. Not a single one of them. Especially not those in the West that come from the US or Great Britain. Yes, okay, if you've got people in the Middle East over there, in Syria, for instance, they're probably going to be pro-Syrian government, as we're going to be pro-British government over here. According to their narrative, international media organisations across the political spectrum, along with human rights organisations, are somehow covertly aligned with Western governments, Saudi Arabia, the Islamic State group and Al-Qaeda, and taking part in a secretive plot to take over Syria. I'm going to come back to that. At the end. According to their narrative, international media organisations across the political spectrum, along with human rights organisations, are somehow covertly aligned with Western governments. Saudi Arabia, the Islamic State group and Al-Qaeda are taking part in a secretive plot to take over Syria. I'm going to come back to that because that is correct. According to their narrative, this is what they're saying. At no point does the BBC say, well, actually, it's true. I'll come back to it at the end. I'll prove it. And the first activist on their hit job in this article is Vanessa Beeley. Anybody who follows online journalism, anybody will know that Vanessa Beeley is brilliant. Unlike these BBC reporters who are sitting behind a desk and reading off a screen and parroting whatever the establishment want them to say, these reporters are on the ground, talking to people on the ground as it happens or just after it happens, doing their own research and their own investigations. Now, if they're finding things that are contrary to what the establishment are saying, like Vanessa Beeley does, then surely that's a good thing. Surely then we get a balanced reporting. Surely then we get both sides of the equation and we can make an informed opinion. The network of activists includes people like Vanessa Beeley. She has more than 30,000 Twitter followers and writes for a news outlet that the website Media Bias Fact Check calls a conspiracy and conjecture site that has an extreme right bias. I'm left. You could call it, if you had to put me in the political spectrum, I'd be a left-leaning, libertarianish sort of person. I'd probably be down there with Gandhi. That's where I would be. And I follow Vanessa Beeley. Not because she's right-wing, because to me, left-wing and right-wing, I don't care. I really don't. All I care about is the truth. This is why I follow people like Vanessa Beeley, because although she might write for a right-wing outlet, and I haven't checked that, she probably doesn't. Actually, I know she writes for a lot of places, not just a right-wing outlet, but still, that's why I follow her, because her reports are accurate. In response to a list of questions, she called BBC Trending Story a blatant attempt to silence independent journalism and repeated unsubstantiated claims about alleged chemical weapons attacks. Really, what unsubstantiated claims are those? If Vanessa Beeley sees this, please get in touch. Tell me what unsubstantiated claims about alleged chemical attacks you told the BBC about. I would love to know, because these unsubstantiated claims I'm probably going to cover in this video. They put up this picture about Vanessa Beeley. US and UK are running a psychological warfare campaign supported by their foreign media, including BBC, CNN, Guardian, Channel 4, to subject Syrian people to further trauma after 7 years of punishing terrorist war waged by US-UK alliance against innocent civilians. Enough. That's accurate. I'm sorry, it's accurate. That actually is an opinion of Vanessa Beeley that I totally agree with. Totally agree with. She goes to the sources and reports from the sources, from the horse's mouth. She doesn't sit in a studio reading a screen. They call themselves reporters. They're not. They're paid actors. They're reading off a screen. This is why they're usually quite pretty and quite good looking, to make people like them. Goes on to say, influential accounts. Beeley gives talks to fringe groups and makes appearances on media outlets, including state-owned Russian channel RT. What is wrong with going on RT? George Galloway goes on RT. George Galloway goes on Sputnik. Why is that a big deal? Why? The reason why is because it is contrary to what the BBC are reporting, and this is an obvious hit job that they're doing on her. But in the online conversation, it goes on to say, about Syria, there are more influential activists about whom much less is known. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Sarah Abdallah has more than 125,000 followers, among them more than 250 journalists from mainstream media outlets. Her follower count is comparable to BBC journalists who regularly report on Syria, such as BBC Middle East editor Jeremy Bowen and BBC chief international correspondent Lys Doucet. So Sarah Abdallah has got as many Twitter followers as them. Considering she's from the Middle East, it's not surprising that people will follow her. In addition to pictures of herself, Sarah Abdallah tweets constant pro-Russia and pro-Assad messages with a dollop of retweeting, mostly aimed at attacking Barack Obama, other US Democrats and Saudi Arabia. Well, if you're in a country and you're in the Middle East and the US has been bombing the shit out of you for the last 25, 30 years, I think you'd be anti-Western as well. I know if I live in the UK, as people know, I know if Saudi Arabia were bombing the shit out of Europe for the last 30 years, I'd be anti-Saudi Arabia as well. Pretty much am already, but still, that's the point I'm trying to make. In her Twitter profile, she describes herself as an independent Lebanese geopolitical commentator, but she has almost no online presence or published stories, or writing away from social media platforms. A personal blog linked to her bio account has no posts. Thought this is interesting because I actually follow Sarah Abdallah on Twitter because a lot of what she publishes is absolutely correct. It's very, very good. It's a good place to source. A lot of what she does is just retweets other really good sources of information. Her tweets have been quoted by mainstream news outlets, but a Google News search indicates that she has not written any articles in either English or Arabic. Now I checked this, and they are right. And it actually made me think, is she actually a real person? I mean, there are pictures of her everywhere, and there's a few websites that are trying to call her out as being an agent of Hezbollah. But I actually couldn't find any online presence other than this Twitter account. I really couldn't. So maybe they've got a point with this. To be fair to the BBC, maybe they've got a point with Sarah Abdallah. I've sent a tweet at her. Hopefully she will respond to this. I would love for her to come out and say, no, I'm a real person. Look, here I am. And then dispel this myth. But until she does that, I don't think this is going to go away. And until she does that, then the BBC might have a point here. To be fair to them, unlike the BBC, I'm trying to be fair and unbiased here. She refused to comment several times when approached by BBC Trending and did not respond to any specific requests to comment on this story in particular. There's a picture of her. So she's a very pretty woman. Very, very pretty. Now, that's just one article that is pretty much just a smear job. Just a smear job. But at the bottom of that article, it goes on to say that Sarah Abdallah had tweeted a lot about the Syria false flag last year, 2017, calling it a false flag. And the hashtags had 126,000 or something like that. Whereas this time, there was only 17,000, so maybe people are not believing them. Well, maybe, BBC, just maybe, as Twitter have admitted, they're suppressing hashtags. Maybe, as Theresa May has said in a recent statement, maybe The government are getting Twitter to suppress these hashtags. Have you thought of that at all? And why isn't that in the report if you're so balanced and unbiased? This next story, this is from the 13th of April, this next story. Why are the Western states considering airstrikes? This is I'm going to prove here that how biased they are. Chemical weapons attacks have taken place in Syria before. Last year, the US retaliated with cruise missiles after at least 80 people died in Khan Sheikhoun in a chemical attack the UN later blamed on the Syrian government. What that should have said is, if they are fair and unbiased, in a chemical attack the UN later blamed on the Syrian government, comma, General Mattis has admitted that there is no proof that Assad did that chemical attack. Mattis has come out and said there was no evidence Assad used poison gas on his people. This is from the 8th of February, and he was talking about last year's 2017 strikes as a result of the chemical attack. Didn't report on that. Didn't mention that the US had no evidence whatsoever, and have admitted it. Did not mention it at all. That is clear bias. Clear bias. They're saying these are real, Assad did it. That's not true. They're not coming out and directly saying it, but their reporting leads you down that path. This next article was from the 16th of April. What do we know about Douma chemical attack? Now, if you notice there in the headline, and they do this all the time in their headlines, they call it a chemical attack, but they just put it in quotes. What do we know about the Douma chemical attack? It's a hell of a lot different than what do we know about Douma chemical attack. But you don't read it like that. People wouldn't read it like that. They would just automatically think, oh, it's a chemical attack. This article says, in August 2013, rockets containing sarin were fired. 2013 this is the one that Barack Obama went to Congress and asked to bomb Syria as a result and got denied. But he went and did it anyway a year later. In August 2013, rockets containing sarin were fired at several opposition-held suburbs in the eastern and western Ghouta, killing hundreds of people. UN experts confirmed that sarin was used in the attack, but they were not asked to ascribe any blame. Weird, isn't it, that they will say that? They will say that UN experts said that it was a sarin attack, but they won't point to who they thought it was. When this article in Global Research, just 2 days previous to that BBC article, had come out, Syria, UN mission report confirms that opposition rebels used chemical weapons against civilians and government forces. And this is talking about the December 13th, 2013 letters to the UN General Assembly. This is saying the UN have said, okay, we don't know for sure, but all the evidence points to the fact that the rebels did this. It was a false flag. All the evidence points to it being a false flag. The BBC don't report that. They say UN experts confirmed that sarin was used in the attack, but they were not asked to ascribe any blame. Do you see how they're not actually giving both sides here? They're only giving one side of the story. That's it. They're not giving the other side anything that goes against their narrative, that Assad gassed his own people. Anything they do not report on. They just say things like this. President Assad dismissed the attack as a fabrication, but the US carried a cruise missile strike on Syrian airbase in retaliation. That's it. They just say Assad said it wasn't true. Or Putin said it wasn't true. Or Putin said it was a false flag or didn't happen. Or Assad said it didn't happen. That's all they do. This is how the BBC use their platform, and it's bias. It's just bias. This is a video from the 13th of April 2018, so it's 6 days ago, this video. And in the video it says, in 2013, the Syrian government attacked eastern Ghouta with chemical weapons. Hundreds died. Look at that. In 2013, the Syrian government attacked eastern Ghouta with chemical weapons. Where is the proof, BBC? Where? The UN have come out and said it probably wasn't. It was probably a false flag, and it was probably the rebels who did it on their own people. But there is the BBC blatantly saying in 2013 the Syrian government attacked eastern Ghouta with chemical weapons. And then there's this. And this is the one piece of evidence that I have seen so far that actually made me think this might have been a chemical attack by Assad. It's the one thing. I'm going to play a bit of it. I'm not going to play it all because the BBC have already coming down on me for the documentary I did about Seth Rich and done a copyright strike against me as a result of that. So it now can't be played in about 50 odd countries. But this is the video of one of the little girls in that that supposed chemical attack video. Take a look at what they report. This is from the 15th of April. They identify her just as Massa. That's it. Take a look.
Massa. كنا بدوما كنا بالأبو القصف شغال فجأة جت برميل جت برميل ما فجر عمل هيك
يعني دخان أبيض واضح. هون بلشوا أعصاب رجلينا تنحل، ضيق تنفس شديد، ببلش بحدودية بالحلق بالأنف بالصدر، أكسجين ما عاد فيه أبدا.
صاروا يقولوا لنا اطلعوا اطلعوا اطلعوا، طلعنا لآخر طابق. أنا وقعت بالأرض ما قدرت أتقاوم. ماما قالت لعمه بنتي 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 بنتي. اجى عمه نزل وطالعني بده يجيب خرقه. اجى على الخرقه بلا بمي. 3 اطباء انه واحد حملني وواحد حمل اختي وركضوا فينا على الطبيه. اجوا وحطونا بالارض وكتوا علينا مي بخلنا واخذوا لنا ابره. بعدين اجينا لنسطح ننام. اجينا نغفل قام ضربت الطيارة. صرنا بالغبرة. نزلنا لتحت على الأبو إنه نزلنا لتحت على التهوية لنهاي. صاروا يجيبوا الشهداء قدامنا. بدل ما نشمها صرنا نشم ريحة الدم.
It's convincing, isn't it? But when ever I see videos like that, especially when it's promoting something that will lead to an action of war, I always think back to this.
They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
So the BBC have showed this video of the little girl in the video in the supposed chemical attack in Duma, saying that there was gas around and it was hissing and there was panic and all that sort of thing, and it's very convincing. However, there's another child in that video that has come out and made a statement. There's another child that has come out and said exactly the opposite to what Massa and her family have told the BBC. I don't think it was the BBC, by the way. I think it was actually another agency that's reported that the BBC has taken up, because I don't think there was any reporter attributed in that. They didn't mention who was actually interviewing the little girl. So what that says to me is they have taken something that somebody else has reported on in the Middle East and reported it as fact. The trouble is, there's a little boy yesterday who's come out, who was in the video, and said something totally different. Take a look at what he says.
كنا بالأب وقالت أمي هلا ما في أكل لبكرة. إجوا ما لقينا غير عم عيطوا برا. يعني نروح على النقطة دغري. رحنا على النقطة ما لقيت غير زلمتنا والدي كنت عليه ماي.
So what do you think the odds are of the BBC putting that on their website? They've put the little girl on the website who said it was a chemical attack. Do you think they'll put the little boy on the website and report on that on the 6 o'clock news that said it wasn't a chemical attack and they were paid to do it? Their family got rice and food afterwards as a thank you from the rebels. Do you think they'll report on that? That's just as convincing as the little girl, in my opinion. I think the chances of them putting that on the website or making it to the news are about as much as me winning double gold in the 2020 Olympics in synchronized swimming and rhythmic gymnastics. That's how confident I am that the BBC will put that nowhere near their website or their news channel. What they will do, though, is put stuff like this on their website. That was a Freudian slip. They will put stuff like this on their website there. Take a look at what they put on, it was yesterday or the day before.
The honourable member may be interested to know that a Syrian doctor in Swansea approached me to say that his wife's family, his brother and husband, were under a gas attack where their 2-year-old died in front of them, and is now telling me that the doctors in Douma are saying that the Syrians, at the point of a gun, are saying, unless you give a testimony, doctor, that there wasn't a gas attack, we'll be killing your children.
Now, if you go to the BBC website and you look at their category on Syrian alleged chemical attack, and you just scroll down and look at the reporting, you will see over and over again they'll write opinion pieces as to what is going to happen in the strikes and what the law is with regards to going to war with Syria and firing these missiles on them, and they will report on anything really that proves the narrative that there was a chemical attack. However, do you think they have mentioned Robert Fisk's report from on the ground in Douma? Robert Fisk, award-winning journalist, one of my all-time favourite journalists in the UK. Do you think they've reported on him at all? No. Not even mentioned it. It's been about 3 days since that report came out. Independent have run it. As far as I can see, the BBC have not touched it at all. Do you think they have commented on Pearson Sharp's reporting? Pearson Sharp from One American News Network. And now, I've mentioned One American News Network before, and somebody in my comments said, oh my God, that's not a good source. The guy's on the ground. He's talking to people. Don't take my word for it. Watch the video.
Not one person has said they know anyone who is sick, anyone who was attacked. They never smelled anything, they never heard anything, and right now there's no evidence whatsoever. So again, that's not definitive proof, but there's also no proof that it even happened. So now we're going to walk up to these people over here and see what they have to say.
Okay. يوم اللي صار اعتداء كنتوا هون.
كنا هون.
That day they were here also. شو سمعتوا؟
And how
كانوا الارهابيين عم يضربوا ونزل علينا قذائف تخبينا بالملاجئ، لا في لا هي الكيماوي سمعناها بالتلفزيون.
They heard about chemical attack by TV only.
أنا بعيد عنه ولا عليك أبو بشار بعيد عنه 50 متر.
This gentleman he was 50 meters from that
50 متر بعيد عنه.
نعم.
Wait, what do you mean he was 50 meters?
50 meters from attacked, chemical attacked.
So he was 50 meters from the place where they say it happened?
Yes, yeah.
When it happened?
What
because
saw this happen? He said,
right.
From that show, he said.
Okay.
Okay.
On that day?
On that day.
Okay.
شو شفت؟
نحن كنا قاعدين بالملجأ وضرب وخصف، ما حسينا إنه في ولا شمينا أي ريحة ولا شفنا أي شيء.
He were underground, but he didn't smell anything. He haven't seen anything.
So when they see it on TV, when they hear about it on TV, what do they think? And what do they think about that?
هلا وقت شفتوه بالتلفزيون شو رأيك؟
نحن ضحكناش.
They were laughing.
They were laughing.
Yeah. ليش عم تضحكوا؟ يعني لعبة بايخة؟
Who started the idea that there was a chemical attack? Who does he think started
يعني
that?
مين بتعتقدوا انه هدول اللي لعبوا هاللعبه انه المسرحيه سوا تبع
يعني مسرحيه صرنا كلياتنا صرنا نعرفها. يعني ما الغرب كلياته عم يلعب علينا، وانت بتعرف وغيرك بتعرف.
Okay, he said the West keeps playing this game, so not first time. And بس انت بتعتقد مين؟
اخي هي لعبه الغرب، هن عم يلعبوا فينا. نحن ما
the West plays this game.
Why?
ليش بتعتقد الغرب لعب هاللعبه؟
لانه ما حدا بس بالاذاعات والتلفزيون غيرهم. هن اللي يعني مثل اللي قالوا الثاني بدي يعمل لك قتل.
هي كل الشغله.
He said like they found excuse to attack Syria or to bombard Syria.
So there's Pearson Sharp, and he's interviewed dozens of people who have all said the same thing. People who were 50 metres away from the bombing when it happened, 50 metres away from the incident at the time, and they're laughing. They're laughing and saying, it's a show. That's what the people in Douma think. So why aren't the BBC reporting on Pearson Sharp's great work? Why not? There are probably 3, 4, 5... Honestly, every day there are more reports coming out of Syria from on the ground that this, all the evidence points to, nothing is there. Nothing is there to prove that it was a chemical attack. These are the people on the ground they're talking to. So would the BBC put any of that on their website? No, not at all. And going back to Vanessa Beeley, who, as I said, is one of my... I think she's great. And I know a lot of my viewers will think she's great as well. And a lot of my viewers will be left-leaning as well. I actually don't even know what Vanessa Beeley's political stance is. I really don't. I don't look at people like that. I just look at... The facts don't have a political bias, you know? And this is the thing that the BBC put on that website. US and UK are running a psychological warfare campaign supported by their fawning media. Nowhere in the BBC's reporting on this war in Syria, nowhere have they said that the US are supporting Saudi Arabia and aligning themselves with these terrorist groups like Jaish al-Islam and ISIS and Al-Qaeda to overthrow the Assad government. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is fact. The CIA are trying to do it. They've been trying to do it for 7 years. Even shows like Fox News will allow this sort of thing, allow people on to talk about this. Even shows like MSNBC will occasionally, probably accidentally, like Morning Joe did the other day, let somebody on who will talk about this very thing. Now, when, I'm not going to show this, but when this guy was talking to Morning Joe and Mika Brzezinski, and he brought up the fact that the CIA have been trying to do this coup for the last 7 years, none of them argued with them. None of them said a word and said, are you sure about this? None of them. There's a reason why. Because it's true. It's fact. And the BBC don't report on it. Why do you think the BBC don't report on it? Is it because if the British public, the overwhelming amount of people who watch the BBC News for facts, knew that the CIA were trying to overthrow the Assad government, do you think they'd support a war? I think it was only 22 or 28% of people were in favour of bombing Syria. How low would it have gone if the people in this country, more people in this country, the majority of people in this country knew that the CIA were trying to overthrow the government? And this is not the first time they have done it in the Middle East. I've done a video on how they overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in Iran in 1953, which started this whole 65-year problem with America and Iran. They don't report a goddamn thing on that. They just say Iran is bad, America is good. And there was one thing I wanted to come back to as well, and I've forgotten this because I've not scripted this video at all. Yeah, that was it. It was the fact that they were talking about narrative. Oh, yeah, and there was another thing as well, the white helmets. This is where Theresa May is getting her information from. If you notice that she'll say things like open sources. They're getting the information from open sources. When she quotes open sources, she's talking about the white helmets and Bellingcat. Just watch this video about how the white helmets were working together with Jaish al-Islam in Aleppo. Take a look at this clip. I'll leave a link to the video down below, but just take a look at this.
Hi everybody, I am Carla Ortiz. I am here in the city of Aleppo. We are in the headquarters of the White Helmets. We see here the main logo of the White Helmets. Over here, we see the teaching of how the White Helmets have to heal. And right above, as you can see, is the logo of ISIS. Over here, we see the flag of Al-Nusra. And here is another flag. And here we have a jacket of the White Helmets. A lot of the neighbors over here have said that they were not taking care of civilians, but only militants that carry weapons and fighters. Take your own conclusions. Al-Qaeda headquarters here, and just like not even 2 meters away, it is the White Helmets headquarters.
Now, do you think the BBC will report any of that? Do you think the BBC will report that the White Helmets are next door to the headquarters of the terrorist groups? Do you think they'll report that we're supporting Saudi Arabia, who are arming and funding these rebels? We are indirectly funding ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Do you think they'll report on that? Do you think there are reports of attacks being made and beheadings being made and White Helmets being complicit in them and then getting on the bus after these attacks with the terrorists to go back to the headquarters? Of course they don't. Why? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. And this is what the BBC know we are onto now. They know that independent journalists are looking at the BBC and thinking, this is bullshit. We know the truth and we're going to report on it. And that is why outlets like the BBC, the mainstream media and the corporate media are attacking independent journalists now like Vanessa Beeley. Because they're reporting the truth and it's exposing the BBC and the corporate and the establishment media for what they are. Propagandists. That's what they are. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please subscribe. Please click the bell. Otherwise you won't see any more videos of mine. The YouTube will hide it. They've admitted that. I need your support as well. If you can spare a few dollars a month to support what I'm doing, then I really, really would appreciate it. I just cannot continue doing this without your support. And I need more of it. I really do. So if you can afford it, please send me a few dollars a month or $5 a month, whatever you can afford. And I will keep trying to report on the hypocrisy of the media, along with other things that pique my attention and hopefully you'll enjoy as well. Thanks very much for your support again. Until next time, peace and take care.